Dave Bolger here, and welcome to Had I Known, conversations with interesting members of the Hamilton College community. This week, I embarrassed myself for your entertainment. All right. Improvising a bit with this one. Have to call an audible. But before I explain, how about that episode last week? Hearing from quite a few folks who learned a thing or two about Hamilton College. Thanks to Fred Rogers and his deep knowledge of really not only the cemetery, but the school as a whole. Heard from a few people who had a similar take, wishing that they had something that they were as passionate and knowledgeable about as Fred has with the history of Hamilton and its cemetery. Had more than one person tell me it was their favorite episode so far. And considering this is now the 77th episode, creeping up on 100, considering there have been 76 up till now, to call that one a favorite, now it actually means something now. And I don't blame him. It was a great one. I think I mentioned in the episode that Fred often titles his tour The Last Dormitory, who he credits Alexander Walcott, class of 1909, with coming up with that phrase. He also points out in a note to me that Frank Lorenz, who was the cemetery tour guide before Fred, often called his tours Giants in the Earth, which is a phrase he borrowed from a class and charter day address given about the cemetery in 1984 by history professor David Ellis, class of 1938. If you haven't listened to that one yet, highly recommend you go check it out. I guarantee you it's better than this episode. You can get it wherever you get your podcast or go to hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. Again, hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. All right, so this week. So I had a guest lined up. I had the interview set to go. Fired up Zoom to record a conversation with someone who I know will be an interesting guest someday, I hope now. But as I'm about to, literally as I'm getting on the Zoom, an ice storm here in New England is pounding us and took out the Wi-Fi. It felt like the early days of the pandemic when we were all learning how to use Zoom and it would freeze and cut out and everyone was draining the Wi-Fi. I had awful memories of that moment and it just couldn't happen. Cut out. Wi-Fi died. And I had a window of time with this guest and done. Oh, and by the way, in true Bolger fashion, I was recording on Friday. You know, episodes released on Sunday. Not a lot of time to find a backup guest, folks, when you don't have anything else in the can. So here we are. My initial thought was just to say, well, guess we're not doing one this week. Sorry, folks. We'll catch you next week. But I have to tell you now that there will be no episode next week because there's a big event going on next Sunday. I don't know if you're aware, but Super Bowl 56 in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium is next Sunday. So it's a business trip for me. Be working all week out in LA. And, you know, I'd like to have the weekend to enjoy the Super Bowl. So no episode next week. So I did not want to go 2 weeks without talking to you. So given we're coming up on the Super Bowl, and I'm very much in a sports sort of mindset, I thought I'd give you a couple gifts for this week's episode. Some sports-themed gifts. And if you're not a sports ball fan, don't worry. I think you'll appreciate this gem just as much.
This is a WHCL Sports Update. I'm Dave Bolger. AC Green is the NBA's Iron Man. The Dallas forward played his record 907th straight game last night. He breaks the record set by Randy Smith. The Mavericks lost the game to Golden State 101-97 in overtime. Cal Ripken, the baseball's Iron Man, was on hand to honor Green. The Atlanta Braves have signed first baseman Andres Galarraga just 2 days after losing Fred McGriff to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Galarraga batted .318 with 41 homers and a league-leading 140 RBIs for Colorado this year. Running back Lawrence Phillips is now a former St. Louis Ram. The team waived their 1996 first-round pick. Phillips missed a team meeting in practice yesterday and has had several brushes with the law since leading Nebraska to the 1995 National Championship. Many officials around the league are now telling St. Louis, "We told you so."
Yeah, that's me. Whew. So, getting ready to head out for a business trip out to the Super Bowl. I got to thinking about the fact that I work in sports, and at one point, that kid's dream was to do something in sports. And, had I known that I would be doing this now, I'd probably be amazed. So I was, had those thoughts, and I thought, hey, why not share what these gems with the faithful listeners of Had I Known? Listening to that kid who didn't realize he had an accent. You gotta hear it there, yeah, a little bit. A little bit of the Long Island in there. Plowing ahead at like 400 miles an hour. Getting through that sports update. I like that I threw in a little wise-ass comment at the end there. But it wasn't only professional sports that were covered back in the mid to late 90s. Just the other day, I saw that the Citrus Bowl was played at Hamilton again. And I actually saw some students threw some oranges. I didn't think that happened anymore. Well, with that in mind, and in honor of this week's Citrus Bowl, how about this one?
The Canucks beat the Coyotes 4-2, and the Kings beat the Blackhawks 4-3. Locally, the Hamilton Continentals hockey team gets underway tonight as they face Colby at 7 o'clock in the Sage Arena. This game, of course, the first game, has sparked much controversy over the years as being the Citrus game, where fans throw oranges on the ice after the first goal. Coach Phil Grady, head coach of the team, says he loves the fans' excitement, but he'd rather them do something else.
It's something that, a tradition here at Hamilton that the students like, but from an athletic standpoint, it's not a good situation for us. We'd rather not see that. We'd love for the students to find other ways to cheer the team on, because it's just not even good as a host, for the opposing team, and it could cause injuries on the ice if, one athlete stepped on a seed or a skin of an orange, or that could really hurt us as well. So we would rather not see it, although we certainly don't want to curb the spirit of the student body. We want them there, we want them cheering, but if they could find another way, we'd sure appreciate it.
Oranges or no oranges, the fans will be rocking in the Sage Arena tonight. Again, that's the Continentals against the White Mules of Colby at 7 p.m. in the Sage Arena. That's a game you can hear right here on 88.7 FM WHCL. This has been a WHCL Sports Update. Stay tuned for news, sports, and weather every hour on the hour on 88.7 FM WHCL, Clinton's #1 radio station. For WHCL Sports, I'm Dave Bolger.
Okay, a few things about that one. One, as soon as I heard this, I remembered vividly the excitement with which I produced that one. Because up until that point, the job of these news and sports updates were to go into the studio, in one of the side studios, and on a cassette tape, like literally on an old school cassette tape, record your, 2-minute news or sports update, and then you'd leave it in the studio for the DJ to play. And it was just, you'd rip off some news reports, or in my case, sports reports, read them, and be done. Well, I was trying to pretend like a real sportscaster, and listening to WFAN in New York as much as I did back then, the sports updates would often have sound bites of interviews. So I thought, why not? So I got Coach Grady. I interviewed Coach Grady. And then I thought, I was so proud. I can't begin to tell you how proud I was, and thought that was as good as anything on WFAN. Well, clearly. I mean, maybe, but, I don't know. The way I say W-H-E, I don't know. That bothers me to hear me say that now. Couldn't say W. I think I called that game, by the way, I called it the Citrus Game in there, not the Citrus Bowl. Clearly, I'm an idiot. But I think I called that game on the radio. And I've told the story before in previous episodes, but I may or may not have smuggled in oranges in the radio equipment. Because security didn't check me, because it's radio equipment. No need to check it. Oh, fun times. And sorry, these are scratchy. This is going, 20-plus-year-old audio cassettes patched through the computer as best I could. So it may not be completely pleasant to listen to. Between my jabroni Long Island accent, talking 100 miles an hour, and the scratches, I'm torturing you. I thought I was giving you a present. Maybe I'm torturing you. But I'm going to torture you one more. Let's do one more. Just to prove the point that it wasn't always about men's sports, but did a lot of coverage of women's sports on WHCL.
The women's hockey team will also try to stay unbeaten when they travel to face the Red Raiders of Colgate tomorrow night. The Continentals have started their second varsity season 2-0 with wins over Amherst and Williams. Tomorrow night's game can be heard live right here on WHCL with pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This has been a WHCL Sports Update. Stay tuned for news, sports, and weather every hour on the hour on 88.7 FM WHCL, Clinton's #1 radio station. For WHCL Sports, I'm Dave Bolger.
And then there's literally 20 seconds of this crescendoing music, because I'm sure all of the listeners in the Mohawk Valley wanted nothing more than this music for 20 seconds. The brilliant radio producer I was. So an interesting fact about that women's hockey game I was promoting there in that update. And going through some of those old tapes, I uncovered a mention of that game later. And going into that game, the third game of the season for the women, Amy Williams, class of 99, after 2 games that season, had 12 points, 8 goals and 4 assists after 2 games. She was a dominant force, scored well over 100 points in her career. Shout out to Amy. And I definitely remember driving out to Colgate to call that game on the radio for WHCL, or as I say there, WHCL, WHCL, Sports Report, WHCL Sports Report. But yeah, went out to Colgate to call that one on the radio, and I think that's the game that I dragged my roommate, Matt Hyduk, to call the game with me. Matt, I know, is listening, so he'll text me as soon as he hears this to confirm or deny that that happened. But I have a memory of dragging Matt to call a game with me. And neither one of us had any business calling hockey, but we gave it our best. I also called a number of games with Bev Lowe, who's been a guest on this show. She was my first broadcast partner, and I had a blast calling games with her as well. Bev, if I sounded like that when I worked with you, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't hear myself back then. And you may say, Dave, it's not that bad. A little high-pitched, younger voice. The accent, you can hear it, but it's not so bad. Well, just for you, I'll end this trip down memory lane with my first ever appearance on the air at WHCL.
Tonight with me are Nathaniel, better known to some as Nate Dogg. We've got Matt sitting over there. And, yeah, Derek too. Derek's here also. And me, I am Dave. We're here as your half-hour sports show. If you want to chat sports, call us up. It's 859-4200. I don't even know the number.
Smooth. Real smooth right there.
All right. We got a few things we want to talk about tonight. And first on the agenda is baseball. Fellas, one of the stories going around baseball the last few days has been Paul Molitor and his chase for 3,000 hits. When you start talking about numbers like 3,000 hits, 500 homers, those sorts of numbers, one thing starts to pop in mind, and that is Cooperstown and the Baseball Hall of Fame. Cooperstown. That is somewhere where we were all there yesterday.
That's just a little taste. That's a little taste. I'm trying to put together a reunion show with those guys, so I don't want to go overboard with our hot takes our hot 1990s takes that were scorching the airwaves. I'm talking about numbers in Cooperstown. Oh, man. So there you have it. There's the heading into Super Bowl weekend. I don't have a guest, sports-themed episode. Punishing myself for not having a guest by embarrassing myself for you. For your pleasure. Are you not entertained? As I mentioned, won't have an episode next week. We'll be back the following week. And we're going to go on a good stretch with some great guests, provided there are no more ice storms that knock out my Wi-Fi. In the meantime, go back and check out the 76 other episodes we have. I'm sure you've missed one. I know you. I'm talking to you. You know who I'm talking to. Go back and listen to that one. I promise you it's a good one. You've been holding off. That one doesn't sound so interesting. I promise you it is. Go check it out. HadIKnown.buzzsprout.com. Anywhere you get your podcasts. And be sure to tune in to the Super Bowl. Do me a favor. Put it on the big screen. Put it on the little screen. Put it on all the screens. All the devices, all the screens. Not going to be happy unless it's on everything. Put it all on. And enjoy. Let me know what you think of this one. You enjoyed these miserable clips. And tell me what you think about Bleach a Creatures. That's the sports show there. Bleach a Creature reunion show. Hot Takes Exposed. Let me know if you want to hear that one. Let me know what you want to hear, period. If you have any suggestions on who I should talk to, any recommendations for guests, I am all ears. HadIKnownShow@gmail.com. HadIKnownShow on social media. Hit me up. You have been listening to Had I Known on WHCL-FM, Clinton, New York. HadIKnown.buzzsprout.com. Had I Known Show on social media. As always, my thanks to Dr. Michael Woods for supplying the music on the show. Except for that awful sports update music. That's not Doc. Don't blame Doc for that one. But once again, Doc is going to play us out. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Had I Known podcast show on your radio or take it to go.
That was good. You want to try it again?
Yep.
Okay.
Why are we doing it again?